Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah. I am a non-diet dietitian, and this video is the start of a brand new series that has been highly requested by you guys. We are going to go through all 10 principles of intuitive eating together. Now, if you are not new around here, you know that I talk about intuitive eating all the time. I have an entire intuitive eating playlist that you can check out, and I did make sort of an overview video way back when about the 10 principles, but I haven't actually gone into each one specifically. If you are brand new to intuitive eating and don't really quite know what it is, I'll leave a link below to a blog post that I made that is sort of a beginner's guide to intuitive eating. But as for today's video, we are talking all about principle 1. And principle 1 of intuitive eating is to reject the diet mentality. The intuitive eating principles don't necessarily need to be followed in the order of 1 through 10. However, I will say that most people do benefit from starting with this principle first. This principle involves ditching the idea of quick weight loss and really working hard to remove yourself from diet culture as much as possible so that you can rediscover intuitive eating. But this can feel really tough because there are always going to be new diets around the corner. There's always going to be influencers telling you to cut out this food, remove that food. Diet culture, unfortunately, is not going anywhere, so this principle is not about getting rid of diet culture, but more so learning how to live a life far removed from it. And honestly, it can kind of feel scary to not have diets to rely on anymore. I have a full video that breaks down the biological and psychological effects of dieting and why they don't work. And maybe you already know all of this. Maybe you know that dieting is not serving you, but you don't quite know what the alternative is. Even if you know deep down that diets don't work, it can feel like you are jumping off the deep end by abandoning them. In fact, there are a few common fears around this idea of ditching the diets. The first common fear that people express is that if I'm not dieting, I'm not going to stop eating. This may come as a surprise, but dieting is actually a really big trigger for overeating. Dieting often involves not eating enough, which your body views as highly problematic. In order to protect you from starvation, you may notice that when you diet, you start to feel hungrier. This is not a bad thing. This is your body's way of protecting you. Once you master this principle and you reject the diet mentality, and you start to adequately fuel your body with the food that it needs, that drive to overeat will decrease. You're not going to feel that constant hunger all the time. But in order to get to this place, you must first establish that mutual trust with your body, letting it know that you're going to be feeding it enough and feeding it consistently. And this involves honoring your hunger, which is a whole other principle that we will discuss in another part of this series. Another common fear that I hear is, if I'm not dieting, I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to feed myself when there aren't rules in place. How do I know what foods to choose? How do I know what portion sizes to consume? Again, it might feel like you are jumping off the deep end, but over time, your body's innate signals will guide you, and your eating will be in response to internal cues rather than external sources, such as MyFitnessPal or a list of rules that you're following. No carbs, no gluten, no dairy. What actually makes your body feel good? You may not have the answer to that right now, and that's okay. But as you remove yourself from the rules of diets, you will start to tune into what that actually is going to be. This is not going to be an overnight process. If you've been reliant on diet rules for a while, you may not quite have a good grasp on your body's hunger and satiety signals. You might feel like cravings are just like through the roof, and you have no idea how to navigate those. But with practice and with grace, you will eventually build the confidence to eat in response to your inner signals again. All right, the third common fear is that if I am not dieting, I am going to feel out of control around food. Here's the thing. Control is not an issue with intuitive eating. You are going to learn to trust your inner wisdom, and you are not going to need willpower or motivation anymore. Because you will no longer be underfed, you're not going to be responding to deprivation anymore. This will lead to you making informed and empowered decisions for your body, which you likely weren't able to do very well when you were dieting. A diet doesn't know your experiences, your food preferences, your thoughts, your feelings. Only you know those things about yourself and can make food decisions based on those in the moment. And you will be able to relearn how to respond to those things. Another thing I often hear from people who are sort of in that contemplation phase of getting into intuitive eating is something along the lines of, oh, I'll just do one more diet. I'm just going to lose a little bit of weight and then I will get into intuitive eating. When you're going through this principle, you might have the temptation of just doing one last diet. That'll be it. And depending who you surround yourself with, you might find that you can't take part in conversations anymore about what diet everyone is on, what what health plan they're following. And dieting really can feel exciting and exhilarating, but I challenge you to reflect back and remember how dieting has made you feel in the past. If you're watching this video, I'm guessing that it left you feeling defeated, desperate, and probably with a worsened relationship with food too. Maybe you are in a place where you feel like you have ditched the diets, you have rejected the diet mentality, but intuitive eating for some reason still isn't working for you. A lot of times what's going on here is something called pseudo-dieting. This might be when you have given up dieting, but some diet-like behaviors still remain. And even though it's less obvious dieting, this pseudo-dieting is still going to lead to the same outcomes that dieting will. The restrict binge cycle, poor body image, the potential to develop into an eating disorder. Let's go over some common pseudo-dieting behaviors to look out for. Eating rigidly healthy with inflexible eating patterns, second-guessing or judging what you deserve to eat, counting calories or macros, eating only safe foods, punishing yourself for eating bad foods, covering up hunger with diet soda or coffee, or in any other way suppressing your appetite with something other than food. Performative eating, which is eating to please the expectations of others, eating only at certain times of day, and cutting out foods for the sake of losing weight. You know, cutting out gluten, cutting out dairy, becoming vegan for weight loss purposes. On the outside, it might seem like these are just really healthy behaviors. You're doing it for your health. But what's really going on here is that these behaviors are causing some sort of food restriction, whether it is a mental restriction or a physical restriction. And that is just going to keep you trapped in the diet cycle. Okay, now that we understand all the different components that come along with ditching the diets, let's discuss which steps to take next. How do we actually reject the diet mentality? First of all, we need to recognize and acknowledge all of the damage that dieting does. Once we truly understand how terrible dieting actually is for our health, it will kind of help us want to not do it ever again. Dieting can and almost inevitably will lead to negative side effects biologically, psychologically, emotionally. It will be helpful to keep these diet pitfalls in mind the next time you are considering going on to another diet. And in case you're like, oh, dieting's not that bad, it hasn't affected me mentally or physically, let's go over a few examples of what can happen when we diet. From a biological standpoint, we can experience decreased metabolic rate. Our metabolism slows way down. That makes any weight loss that happens very difficult to maintain. Dieting can lead to increases in binging and cravings. In fact, restriction is the main cause of binge eating, and dieting is nothing if it's not restriction. Dieting can lead to weight cycling, where your weight sort of becomes a roller coaster. You lose weight and then you gain weight and then you gain even more above what your initial starting weight was. So you go on the next diet and you lose weight again only to regain it. This weight cycling is actually really, really bad for our health. In fact, some science suggests that weight cycling is worse for our health than just maintaining a weight at a higher BMI. Dieting can lead to our satiety cues starting to atrophy, which means that we may not have a good grasp on what fullness feels like, leading to us continuously eating more than our body needs, which can play a role in that weight cycling we just talked about. Dieting can also teach the body to retain more fat when we finally stop the diet and start to eat again. Your body's not sure why you were not eating enough, it just knows that you weren't eating enough, and so in order to keep you safe, it is going to start to retain more body fat next time you eat again. Your body is trying to protect you by creating a lot more stored energy available for the next time there's a self-inflicted famine. Dieting can also lead to symptoms such as headaches, fatigue, hair loss, menstrual irregularities, dry skin. It's just overall an uncomfortable experience. Psychologically, dieting can lead to an increased risk of disordered eating and eating disorders. It can cause stress or increase your vulnerability to stress. You just feel more stressed out, or you can't quite handle stress like you used to. It can lead to feelings of failure and lowered self-esteem. It can erode your confidence and your self-trust. And of course, it can lead to increased cravings and preoccupation with food. I don't say these things to scare you. I say these things to remind you of why dieting doesn't work, because understanding fully the harm that dieting does is going to be essential to help you reject the diet mentality. So again, the next time you're thinking about restricting your food intake, remember the potential harm that can lead to. All right, the next step to master this principle of intuitive eating is to be aware of any diety thinking that you notice. This basically involves just practicing being more self-aware, taking a note of what thoughts are occurring. Maybe when you go to eat something, you think, oh, I shouldn't be eating this. That is the diet mentality speaking. Practice challenging these thoughts when you notice them. Like, wait, I totally can eat this food? Why do I believe that I shouldn't be able to eat this food? Try to ask yourself without judgment where these thoughts are coming from. Where did you learn them? Because you were not born thinking that way about food. Okay, the next tip to challenge the diet mentality is to get rid of all of the dieter's tools. I know this one feels super scary, but get rid of the scale. It is not serving you. And if you're like, ooh, wait, I gotta make sure that my weight is not going up though while I'm working on this principle, I've got a few videos about that I encourage you to watch. Get rid of any diet apps on your phone, like MyFitnessPal, Lose It, any app that makes you track or in any other way determines how or what or when you get to eat something. This step might also include doing a social media detox. Go through and unfollow any account that is not serving you, any account that leads to body comparison, any account that shames food. Hit that unfollow button immediately. And lastly, I know it is so hard, but be compassionate towards yourself as you are going through all of these principles. Don't beat yourself up for wanting to go on a diet. Diets are so appealing from the outside. And these days, they've gotten really good at marketing. And there's even tons of pseudo diets out there that make it seem like they're a healthy lifestyle change, but in reality, it's a diet. So don't beat yourself up if you get the urge to go on one of those diets or healthy lifestyle plans. Even if you are fully aware that diets don't work, you're like, yes, Hannah, I get it. I understand that dieting is bad for me. There can still be that lingering temptation to hop on to the next trend that promises a quick fix. But remember, this journey is not pass fail. You can't do intuitive eating right or wrong. That is all for Principle 1. We've got 9 more principles to cover. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like it if you enjoyed it, and while you're there, make sure you subscribe so you are aware of when I post part 2 of this series. Happy diet ditching, and I will see you next time.